Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Ridge Talk. I'm Justin. We got Daniel over here. Sean is with us again as well. And feel free to like and subscribe to the podcast so that every time a new episode drops, you get notified for that. The information is there on the bottom of the screen. And today's episode, this week's episode, is just kind of a hodgepodge of different things. This isn't going to go live until after Easter. So we're recording this here right in the middle of Holy Week. So we'll talk a little bit about that, a little bit about Holy Week and Easter. But we're also just going to talk about wrapping up the Colossians series from this past week and maybe just talk a little bit about what's happening in our lives as well. So, I can go ahead and start with some thoughts on Easter and Holy Week. I was telling both Daniel and Sean yesterday that I started reading through a book titled On Earth as It Is in Heaven. It's a compilation of different things that N.T. Wright. He's a historian in Christianity, and he's written several books through the years, and a publisher hired, I think, his son to do a compilation of several N.T. Wright short snidbits and compile it all into a daily readings book. The book's titled On Earth as in Heaven. And so I just started reading through it, really short readings because it is meant to be done daily. And the whole first section of the book is really just about Easter and how important Easter is in Christian history. And, just one of the things that stuck out to me early on in reading it is Wright is pointing out that if you were to look at Christianity in our culture today, Christmas is probably more celebrated than Easter. And a lot of that is just the westernization of Christmas and what we've made it through the years. And he's just pointing out that for the early Christian church, it was completely opposite. Like, people would talk about and teach about Christmas and Jesus' birth, and obviously, it's in the Gospels. The Gospel of Luke outlines it in a lot of detail. But for the early church, like the first Christians, Easter was the event. Like, it was the celebratory event. Christianity would not exist without the resurrection. And one of the things I pointed out that was pointed out in the book, one of the short articles, also was, a lot of people give up something for Lent. Whatever that might be. There's a 40-day period where people give up something in order to draw closer to God. And N.T. Wright notes, we ought to consider, after we give up something, after we, get the weeds out of the garden, we ought to consider what we might want to be planting at Easter time. Maybe if we're weeding out something over 40 days, maybe we ought to be planting and cultivating and fertilizing other good things that we want to grow upon Easter. So that's just something I've been reflecting on since I read that a couple of days ago. Like, what might be something that, not just something that I need to surrender over to grow closer to God, but something that I want to plant and cultivate and fertilize and want to flourish in order to grow closer to God. So, I don't know. I don't know if you have anything you want to contribute to that, Sean. Like, what something is in your life that maybe you want to plant or cultivate a little bit more.
Yeah, I think some of the talk that we've been doing amongst ourselves about the rule of life things, if you've watched other episodes that we've done here recently, we've kind of been talking about, like, what are some practices in our own lives that we would want to have there in a consistent manner in order to help us flourish in our relationship with God and in our relationship with others in the world. And so I think for me right now, I'm trying to just get back to a more normal rhythm of prayer, of scripture reading, of spending intentional time with God. Being open right now, like, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
And experiencing a lot of pain in my body again, which goes hand in hand. And I'm just kind of out of sorts. I shared with you guys yesterday, like, right now, life is good. I've got no reason to feel badly, really, but my body and my mind are just in a place where it's like just right on the edge of just kind of, pushing through right now. So in that sense, I'm reminded right now of like how easy it is to let go of some of those things that help you flourish, because you just are kind of in a bit of a survival day in, day out mode. And it's easy to let go of the things that would actually help. I did pause this morning before coming here for all of our meetings and things today to just pray in an intentional way, and really felt something shift in me when I did that. But it would have been just as easy in the fog of just waking up, not feeling great, being exhausted, to overlook that and to just kind of show up in my own strength. And what I recognize right now for myself is that if trying to do anything in my own strength is going to be extremely limited right now.
Yeah.
And it's a big week, like you said. It's Holy Week. We all do. We all have a lot on our plate this week that's kind of outside of what our normal responsibilities and preparations are, with an extra service. I'm serving at Ridgeview this weekend, while also, getting our teams ready for the service here at Southridge. And, it'd be so easy to just do the checklist of the things that I need to do for work and for home and all of that, and to just kind of get through the week. And I've been praying even before. It's funny, I've been praying since before this week. Hey, God, I really want to be present during Holy Week and be present to you during Holy Week, because there is something about turning your attention to God during this week. And I already feel that pull of not feeling great. I'm tired. I'm just going to get through the week. I don't want to do that. I don't want to just kind of check out and go through the motions and push through. And so I'm really in openness and vulnerability, struggling with getting myself in a place where I can do that well.
I appreciate that, and I can personally empathize with that. And just through ministry through the years, I've heard stories from other people. It's very similar. You get into these really just hectic seasons in life, and maybe you even don't feel God's presence in those seasons. And the first thing you do is like, okay, well, then I'm not going to engage in prayer and reading the scriptures, because I don't feel God's presence when I'm doing those things, and I don't feel it when I'm not doing those things. So I'll just not do those things and just push through. And I've been in those places before too. Yeah. And where you just want to, hey, I'm just going to push through, just do what I want to do or need to do. And I found in my own life that it doesn't always work very well. You've probably found that out as well. Which is why you're like, hey, I don't want to do that. Yeah. It's amazing how many times in the Psalms you see that with David and others who, at least a half to 2/3 of the Psalms are laments, where he's crying out like, God, where are you right now? All this stuff is happening. I don't understand, but I will still worship you. Yeah. Like you see that all throughout the Psalms, and that is the heart that we do need to have for God.
Yeah, and I think too, there is just the reality that we have an adversary. Yeah. It's funny. Last week, I deal with chronic pain. Last week, I had a pretty pain-free week, and was looking ahead at Holy Week and going, I really want to be present, because last year for our Good Friday service, I had like a vertigo attack, and I really kind of felt like last year for Good Friday and Easter, I was just managing and getting through because of that. And so this year I was like, all right, I feel good. It's going to be a good week. And right now, like, I'm having extreme pain through my body, and I'm like, here we go again. Yeah. And, I'm not going to say, oh, everything's the devil, whatever. But the reality is we face an adversary that will throw things at us to try to skew our perspective, get our eyes off of God. and I have to also be mindful of that. Like we don't, and that's part of what we're saying with our conversation in Counter Formation is we don't just live in neutral territory. You know, life is not a neutral space. Life is life, and the enemy are constantly trying to turn us or push us or form us in a different direction. And I think just being aware of that, and even just in the small things, being intentional. You know, this morning was like, hey, I don't have a half hour where I can sit down and try to orient myself to God. I've got this 2-minute window.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to sit. And I sat and I very simply prayed. I said, Holy Spirit, would you come? And would you just be present with me? And I kept repeating that and breathing and just allowing that to be what my simple prayer could be today.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I really resonate with both of you guys and kind of what you're sharing there. You know, right before we turned the cameras on, I looked and I said, guys, I'm not in a great spot right this second. I'm just not. Yeah. I don't know if what all I have to contribute. And as you guys were talking right before you said that, Sean, I was like, there is an element of something that's you alluded to an enemy. There's an element of spiritual warfare, and I think that's real. I think there really is a heightened. In my own life, a heightened level of busyness and distractions, pain. So you mentioned pain. I don't have a heightened level of pain, but I have a heightened level of busyness and therefore a heightened level of exhaustion.
Yeah.
I'm just tired. I walked in today and I'm tired. Yeah. And it's there's something about that I think we need to be aware of. I'm always, people, I've heard people throughout my life say, oh, my day is so much better when I spend time in the Word and prayer, right? First thing in the morning. I just have such a much better day. Yeah. And that has never been my experience. It hasn't. Yeah. My experience, and especially since I've been in ministry, has been the more I try to focus my attention on God and connect with Him, the more distractions and exhaustion I seem to experience. Yeah. And, I think there's something to that. So I appreciate you guys sharing that and just being vulnerable today.
Yeah. So just turning the page a little bit. We just wrapped up the Colossians series this past week. And I really enjoyed doing that closing message for the series. You kind of look at, what's Paul's exhortation to the Colossians at the end of that letter? Like, what's he encouraging them or inviting them to do? And, it's two things that might sound really simple or basic, but it's really a complete lifestyle change. Like, hey, devote yourselves to prayer and be wise in your interactions with non-Christians, making the most of every opportunity. Let your words be attractive and graceful. And you might be reading through Colossians and just read over those few verses and keep going and be like, okay, I'm done. But when you really take that in, be like, oh, okay, what might I need to give up or surrender in order to be more devoted to prayer? And what step may God be inviting me to take to make the most of every opportunity? I think there's a lot through just that short letter of Colossians that can encourage us to take a lot of different steps that are possible there. Yeah. So, I just share that to say, if you didn't get to hear all of the Colossians messages or anything, they're all still on our website. Please feel free to go back and review those. And other than that, we can just talk about life. Like get to know the pastors here of South Ridge Church.
There's something that you just said that I think you connected a dot for me. And you're really consistent with this.
Is this in Colossians or something else?
It is. Okay. Well, related to what you said about the approach of looking and seeing where the invitation from God is, in your question for reflection that you provide. And you're very consistent about helping people to get to a place where they might look at things as an invitation from God rather than I have to do this thing. And again, just thinking about this morning, like, I saw the invitation to just stop for the minute or two that I had to spare and to join God in prayer and to go to him. And I could have very easily been like, I should, out of some obligation, or, when we talk about, hey, we want to promote a flourishing life of prayer, scripture reading, other spiritual practices here. I said this yesterday in our meeting. How can we express to people, this is something we want for you, not something we want from you?
Yeah.
And because that's God's perspective. God isn't saying, I require this time in scripture or prayer. I require this from you to meet some quota or to be eligible for relationship. God's like, I want this for you. I want relationship with you. Mm-hmm. And man, I don't know why that stuck out to me, but it is like that idea that so much of what we talk about, that human beings get in the way and make legalistic, make it like you have to do this in order to be a good Christian, really is more of, it's an invitation from God to connect with him in a deeper way.
Yeah, the language that I've been using for that, and I really don't know. Like, I don't know if I caught this in another author's book I was reading, or if it's my own language. I don't even know. But when you get into these spiritual disciplines and, spiritual formation, discipleship, what does that look like? It isn't that checklist of what I have to do. It's more of a, hey, God is inviting you into a way of life that works. Mm-hmm. And how's your life working out for you right now? What in your current life isn't working out the way that you expected it to? Yeah. Or God is inviting you to join him and partner with him in a way of life that works. And it's going to be very different than what you think it might be. So that's just kind of the language I've adopted for that. And again, I don't know if I borrowed or stole that from somebody else or not, but
yeah,
I find myself using it pretty consistently.
Yeah, I think so much of our heart really is, and we don't always communicate things the way we wish we would have. Half the time you're like, did the way that I say this really communicate my heart? But what I know confidently is, like, our heart really is that we want so much for people to participate in the things that we have found connect us more deeply to God. And that is like the burning passion in each of us to really help people along in that journey. And sometimes because of the context, we stand on a stage and kind of talk to people. Sometimes it might even feel like we're talking at people. That can change that dynamic and make it feel like, oh, this is, we're telling you what to do.
Yeah.
Versus we really just are burning with this desire to invite you into a depth of relationship with God that will really be for you.
Yeah, and transformative in your life. Yeah. Like take head knowledge and turn it into heart knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good.
You're getting emotional over there.
I am. Yeah, I am. Yeah, this is it's just, I'm tired.
Yeah.
And
we've had it's been a tough week a little bit.
A little bit of a tough week.
And
I think there's so many things for us to celebrate here and what's going on. And in addition to a heightened level of busyness, at times there's a heightened level of criticism that we receive. And there's been some of that. There's been some of that this week. And Sean, just something that you, that is the burning desire in our hearts, is that people would know the hope that is in Christ, the life that is available to them. And that, we don't always say the things the way we want to say them.
We certainly don't always get it right.
With the excellence or with the regularity that we want to say them. But that is the desire of our hearts, and that just really resonated with me. Is that's true? That is a true statement, and it's just,
which sometimes is the reason why the criticism feels like
heavier.
you're a dagger to the heart, because we really do just love to try to provide opportunities for people to connect with Jesus. And I'm excited. Again, I know people are going to be watching this after Easter. I am genuinely excited for Good Friday and Easter to be able to tangibly with our people, sit on Good Friday and reflect on the cross. And, you guys will be with our people. I'll be with some of our people at Ridgeview, and getting to celebrate alongside them the resurrection. I think it's going to be great.
I'm glad that you have the opportunity to serve down there with them.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've I said at the beginning, this is kind of a hodgepodge episode, talking about Holy Week, Good Friday, Easter, Colossians, just some things God's doing in our hearts. But we could turn the page again, just talk about, hey, what's happening in life outside. We can even talk about outside the church. Outside, like I said, a little bit of get to know the pastors here at Southridge Church. We are heavily invested in the ministry here. We wholly believe in our purpose. We love meeting with people and discipling people and counseling people and teaching and all of that kind of stuff. But this is, it's a vocation for us. It doesn't define us. It isn't who we are. So I don't know if you guys have anything to share, just anything that's happening in your life that, maybe, you're not going to mention in a message, maybe you would, but just, anything happening in your life right now that you just want to talk about.
Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
The first thing that comes to mind is funny because I'm trying to think of what's not connected to the church, but the example that I have in my mind is still connected to the church. But I'm excited about it. So I'm in the midst of helping facilitate our mission trip to Nicaragua.
That's awesome.
It's been 10 years since I've been to a Spanish-speaking country. I have a degree in Spanish. It was something that was a part of my life.
You can speak Spanish pretty fluently, right?
Yeah, I've lost some because it's been 10 years since I've been out, but having Zoom meetings and stuff with the people in Nicaragua, and then once I get there, it'll be a lot. That's exciting for me to get to, I purposely went to college, got a Spanish degree along with my ministry degree because I wanted to be able to use Spanish with some ministry component. And for several years, I got to do that. We traveled over a dozen times to Cuba, led teams to there. And that's been a missing component of my life that was such a big part of my life, going 2 times a year to having a 10-year break in between. That's really exciting. And then the more exciting aspect of that is my wife's going. Chastity's going with us.
That's great.
And okay, here come the emotions again. We sat Sunday. We had a meeting, and each meeting, 3 people have been sharing their testimony. So as a part of us getting to know each other, and then it's also an exercise of, hey, when we find ourselves in conversation with people on this trip, having just kind of told our story a little bit to each other will also help us in being able to just, if you're talking to somebody why are you here? Well, we're here because we love Jesus, and we want to come be with other people who know him and serve in a way that we can. So we do that. And this past weekend, the 3 testimonies that were shared were just incredibly powerful. And my wife was one of those. And it just, I don't know, there's something when you see the person that you love the deepest talking about what God has done and is doing in their life. And then now that I get to step in and share something that used to be like a big part of my life and hasn't been for as long as she's known me. To get to step into that with her is super exciting.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
yeah.
Did you have anything you wanted to share?
Yeah, mine's not that deep. Spring is officially here.
Thank God.
And we're starting to see, and I think that's
I'm loving the weather. I mean, some of the weather.
today's not great, but one of the things, this is weird. I am more connected to the land here in West Virginia than I ever have been. I've been more interested in the outdoors than I have been in my whole life, and I don't know why. I think it's quirky. I think it's nerdy. I don't like to tell people about it. I love foraging for mushrooms.
That's super cool, dude.
I love going out and foraging for mushrooms, and I've been seeing my Facebook feed is now filling up with people around the country. Morel mushrooms are about to start popping, and they're kind of a big deal around here. And ramps, it's also ramp season.
Yeah.
And anyways, I've got one or two buddies here in town, and we've been talking like, have you seen anything yet? And we're like, no, it's too early. It has to do with the soil temperature, and it has to do with a bunch of stuff. And so, but I'm like, we got about 2 more weeks, and then it's about to start happening. And so I'm about to be hunting a lot more.
I mean, I love that.
It's so weird. But I'm like, I like it.
No, I think it's funny because you've been here for a little over 2 years now,
just over
right?
2 years, yeah.
I've been here. I just started my 7th year here. And I feel like in that aspect, you're way more Appalachian than I am at this point. I look at that and I go, that's something I've always wanted to get into. And for 7 years, I've just kind of sat here. So I think it's a cool.
We'll go. I'll take you out. We'll go look.
Or maybe I'm just as big a nerd as you are. I don't know.
What about you, Justin?
It's funny. I don't have any interest in looking for morels.
You grew up here.
I did grow up here, and I think the family of origin I grew up in, mushrooms were not consistently on the menu.
Oh, yeah.
And later in life, just through some allergies and whatnot, I was diagnosed with a mold allergy. So they're like, hey, don't eat mushrooms. I'm like, ugh. And the thing is, I like grilled mushrooms. I like mushrooms on pizza, that kind of thing. So sometimes I still eat them, but probably not as often as you guys do.
So you're training for a marathon.
That's true.
And here's the deal. Here's what I think, quite frankly. As many miles as you are running on that rail trail, you got to be spotting some mushrooms.
So
there's definitely mushrooms somewhere on that trail.
So here's what I can say. I live close to a rail trail entrance. It's the one that goes from Fairmont to Morgantown. And I clock a lot of miles every spring, summer, fall on my cycling on that trail. I mean, I cycled over 3,000 miles last year. I ran over 1,000 miles last year. I will say this, like having a sabbatical last summer helped with those numbers an awful lot. But just yesterday, I rode 26 miles on the trail. And I did not see any people foraging for mushrooms yesterday. But every spring I do. I see photographers who are out getting pictures of the first spring flowers, and I see people with backpacks out there foraging for mushrooms every single year. And for the sake of my love for them, even though they are strangers and I've never met them in my life, I'm not going to tell you where on the trail they were because I want them to keep coming back and finding their spots that they have found where they can get their mushrooms. But there are people actively on the trail all the time that are foraging for mushrooms. And yes, I did mention this in a message that I'm currently training for a marathon, and that's work. Just last week we had not any kind of heavy tension or anything. Just my lovely wife Megan and I were talking through where our daughter needed to be when, how, what that looked like, and working around my wife's spiritual direction schedule because she's a spiritual director, and my daughter's schedule, and me training for a marathon. It's like, again, Megan was graciously like, hey, I know that you are currently... You've basically taken on another part-time job. Like, I know that training for a marathon, that's what it is. But we also have these family responsibilities, and because of my spiritual direction, I need you to get our daughter to this location on this day at this time. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I can work around that.
Yeah.
It's good. But, we are now, today actually is 40 days out from Marathon Day. So by the time this episode drops next week, we'll be 32, 33 days out or whatever. And, right now I'm just kind of counting the days. I ran and walked, but I ran 21 miles last week for a long run. And I'm like, this is brutal. This is brutal. Like that, like you get up to that point in mileage, and your body just starts shutting down. Like, hey, you've burned more calories than you have taken in today, and you need them.
How long does that take? How long did that take?
There's two ways to ask that question. One way is to say, how long does it take somebody to run 21 miles versus how long does it take you to run?
Yeah.
It took me 4 hours. So, maybe I'll be able to run this marathon in under 5 hours. I'm not going to kill myself to do that. That run, I was like, okay, if it's more than 5 hours, I'm not going to beat myself up.
I don't even like driving that far.
Like the time limit in my mind, I go, it's such an admirable thing to finish that. Like,
I think there are,
Yeah.
Fairmont is not a big town, right? And I think there are 8 people, including myself, that I know of in Fairmont that are running the Pittsburgh Marathon. And I'm pretty confident that of all 8 of us, the other 7 will finish in under 4 hours or maybe under 4.5 hours.
Wow.
And I'm just not going to. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. Right now, it's all about finishing. It's... I believe that God gave us limits and that we have to acknowledge those limits and live within those limits. But there is an element to, what are the limits that God has given me that I need to surrender to? I'm never going to play basketball like Michael Jordan. Like, I can surrender that limit and say, okay, I'm never going to be able to do that. But God also, puts things in our lives that are limits that are, hey, let's see if we can stretch you a little bit and push that limit out a little bit farther. And that's what I feel like for this marathon training. Is it a big accomplishment in life? Is it something on my bucket list I want to check off? The answer is yes. Am I going to do it again? My answer currently is no. That I don't want. I'm going to push myself for this season. But the reality is, and I kind of discovered this with the running and cycling last year, that I've discovered that I like setting goals, and I like setting goals that do push me beyond a limit a little bit. And that doesn't just translate into exercise. It translates into so many different areas in life and in ministry. And this is just one of those this year that I'm like, okay, I'm going to push myself in this way for this season to accomplish this goal. And I'm sure that in the years to come, there will be other things in life and in ministry. Then we'll say, okay, I'm going to stretch myself, not to the point of complete exhaustion, not to the point of burnout, not to that. I'm going to surrender the limits to the limits I know God's given me, but I'm also going to stretch myself a little bit in other ways that God might be stretching me. And I just think that's something important that we all have to be open to in life.
Yeah.
So we got mushrooms, we got Honduras, we got...
Nope, Nicaragua.
That's what I said, Nicaragua. I was at Chestnut Ridge for years before we planted South Ridge Church, and they had a Honduras mission trip every year, like every year. So, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Every time I say Honduras, you're like, no, it's Nicaragua. And I'm like, oh yeah, it is. It's Nicaragua. But anyway, I'm sure we all have other things going on in life. And here's the reality: we're willing to have those conversations and catch up with people throughout the week. Like, yes, we are busy, you know, especially here during Holy Week, Easter, Good Friday, all that. But you know, this morning I had coffee and breakfast with somebody. I know you have breakfast, coffee, and lunch with people throughout the week. I know you do the same. You know, if you ever have questions for us and you think, I just want to have more of a face-to-face conversation, I don't want to send an email or a text. I want to really share something that's on my heart. Or I want to ask one of my pastors a question, or, you know, I just want to share what God's doing in my life. Please feel free to reach out to us and let us know. We do welcome those conversations.
Yeah.
So, once again, feel free to like and subscribe down below. We got the information there. And next week, you know, this is going to drop right before we begin the Counter Formation series. So we've talked about that in some episodes in the past as well. We'll probably be talking about it more in some future episodes as we go through it. But we're really looking forward to that, and we hope that you're able to join us for it. So until next time, we will, we'll see you then.
Thanks.